A story from a woman named Alexandra who writes, Mr. Right was right in front of me. Believe it or not, my husband and I met through the guy I was dating at the time. My husband was roommates with the guy that I was dating. Fred, my boyfriend, had let Kevin live with him temporarily. Kevin would become her husband, while Kevin was going through a divorce. I was 33 and had been dating Fred for more than 2 years, and occasionally we would all go out together. But I never thought of Kevin as anything more than Fred's roommate. He was absolutely not my type. He wasn't even on my radar. My type was athletic. My type was a guy that was built well. But Kevin was so out of shape. He wasn't a go-getter. He wasn't fun. Meanwhile, I thought Fred was Mr. Wonderful. Fred and I seemed to connect on that soul level. We had the same optimism about life, the same sense of humor. So I put it up with the fact that Fred could be emotionally unavailable. Fred was working so much that when I'd call, I'd end up talking to Kevin instead, because Fred was never around to take the calls. I would talk to Kevin more and more. Kevin would make excuses for Fred throughout the relationship, and honestly, as much as I complained, I made excuses for Fred too. He was my idea of Mr. Right, so I tried to rationalize any behavior that didn't fit into my idea of Mr. Right. You know, what happens, and I often see this, people start giving excuses to the person that they're dating for in order to convince themselves or justify the decisions that they're making to date that person. Soon Kevin got his life together and moved into his own place. But we'd become close friends. We talk on the phone the way I talk to one of my girlfriends. Even though we didn't have the same interests, we could take a conversation anywhere and run with it. I loved talking to Kevin every day, but I was in love with Fred, his roommate. Fred would always say he was more available, but he was completely unreliable. The last straw with Fred came when he and I were supposed to have some couple time, and he showed up with Kevin and said that he could stay for a while, but then he had to run back to work. And after he bailed out, I was so angry and mad, and Kevin was very sweet and understanding. He didn't make excuses for Fred. I'm sure it never occurred to Fred that Kevin was a threat, because Kevin wasn't charming like Fred. He was the safe best friend that he could have as a roommate. And he was. I had no romantic interest in Kevin at all. He was a total guy friend. After that night, I broke up with Fred. We'd been together for 3 years. I was crushed, but this relationship was going nowhere. Fred didn't want to break up, and he begged me to get back together, so we did for a few weeks. But then I realized he was just giving lip service to what I wanted, but wouldn't follow through. His actions were not matching his words. We look for actions, ladies and gentlemen. Fred will always say whatever he needed to repair the relationship. He was good at the gift of gab. I told him this wasn't working, and of course he came back with the kinds of romantic lines that I wanted to hear, which kept me in the relationship. He would say, when we're older I picture this, but he wouldn't give any commitment like, I want to marry you and spend my life with you. These are the things that a woman wants to hear. I didn't fall for it anymore. I was devastated, but I knew I had to break up with him. But here's what's crazy. I still thought he was my soulmate. I just thought that my soulmate didn't want to be with me. Now I realize that who I thought was my soulmate wasn't the right guy for me. But back then, I was sad. So I was feeling terrible. And Kevin and I had our daily check-ins, you know? Hey, how are you doing? They would just call and chat. Kevin dragged me out with his friends to cheer me up. I was 34 at that point. He was dating again after his divorce. We'd both log out onto other similar websites and help each other fill out dating profiles. We'd click on people and ask each other, would he be a match? Would she be a match? It was fun. We hung out a lot. I always looked at my worst around him. It never occurred to me to try to look good or treat this in a romantic fashion. All our friends said we should date, but I said, that's like dating my brother, and he said, that's like dating my sister. Then one night, he had some people over, and after they left, we stayed up late talking. I remember being surprised and thinking, wow, this is strange, but it feels really good. We talked about it, and we both thought there was a risk this could end badly, since we were such close friends. So we decided not to pursue it. But at the same time, I couldn't go back on our friendship. Suddenly, I found myself completely attracted to Kevin. It was really hard for both of us to hang out with all that tension. So we said, let's keep going with it. So we started to open up a little more and share the more tender parts of ourselves and get more vulnerable. It was just something I teach people to do all the time. In the old days, this would have been considered courtship, but because we didn't consider it dating, there was no pressure. We had just been ourselves. But by being his friend for all that time, I knew how he dealt with other people. I saw him around his girlfriends as well. I helped him with what to wear. I knew what his insecurities were. I could see through any veil he had thrown up. I think that if I'd known Kevin in any dating situation, I would have been critical of a lot of things. He's not this enough, he's not that enough, but I wouldn't have gotten to the core of him, the part I fell in love with. Initially, I didn't think of him as husband material because he wasn't my physical type and he wasn't upbeat like the guys I dated. He put across those gruff airs and I think, oh, here he goes again. But as I got to know him, I could see that he had a soft, tender inside that he was protecting. I'm lucky that the friendship gave us the opportunity to see parts of each other we may not have discovered. And so I was chasing an ideal. But finally I realized that what I thought was my ideal wasn't right for me. Kevin and I have a very romantic marriage. Kevin does thoughtful things. He makes dinner, he does the laundry, he sold a car that was a financial burden because he knew it bothered me. He said, it's our second anniversary and I want to do the right thing. He even thanked me for helping him with it. Kevin is the guy that Fred never was. The solid stand-up guy who's there for you. In building our household, he's fully participating rather than a spectator. We share what's going on and what we're thinking, what we're going through. We can disagree and talk about it. We always go in with the attitude that we can overcome whatever challenge life throws at us. Kevin's very good at seeing where the other person is coming from. Amazing. If we're both too upset, we'll say, let's address it at another time when we're both calm. He has maturity without being patronizing, and he's involved without being clingy. It's the right balance of everything. As our marriage continues to move forward, so many of the things I wanted are coming to fruition one by one. Maybe because of a lack of unrealistic expectations, acceptance of each other, and mutual respect, all those things that I thought I'd have to do without in a partner are manifesting in the most amazing ways. Maybe I'm just lucky, but it makes me think of several stories of arranged marriages that end as true love. Our marriage is successful because it's built not on unattainable fantasy of perfection, but out of the realization that love is created, love is not presented.